Hello and welcome to this very special bonus episode of Photography Out Loud. My name is Paul Davis, and as always, I'm joined with my colleague Joel Longbone. How are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, good. Excited for this one.
Oh, it's
bonus round.
Bonus one, yeah. It's to the point where we wanted to give it it's extra special sort of thing that it needed to be. So we named the bonus episode. Everything.
It should probably just be called
bonuses.
Special, shouldn't it? People do Christmas specials and stuff.
Yeah, you see, when I said I'm going to name it bonus. Bonus.
What's this, KFC?
Oh.
We're already 50 seconds in, and you're already not talking properly.
Yeah, but I did get the intro right though, and I actually slightly missed it, didn't I? So I'm above and beyond already. So. I'm done. I can go home. Oh no,
Sanjay's going to be like, "What are these guys doing? Let's go."
Yeah. So, because this is a bonus, we don't. Do we go straight into? No, we don't. I don't know. What do we do with a bonus, Joel? This is our first bonus.
Let's show the video, and then we can get started.
Okay. Yeah.
I've always had three great passions in my life: photography, cars, and architecture. I've chosen to pursue photography. I'm Sanjay Jogia, and this is what I do.
Sanjay, welcome to the show. How are you doing? You okay?
Hi, Sanjay.
Thanks for having me on the bonus special.
Yeah,
the bonus special.
Have you ever been on a KFC menu before?
No, I'm vegetarian. I don't eat KFC, but I'm always boneless. It's going to be the hashtag for this episode, isn't it?
Yeah, that's how it's going to trend on my mistakes. Yeah.
Let's see how many little hashtag subtitles we can get for this one.
Yeah.
Definitely. Two things there. What an amazing sort of intro video that you've put together there. That's absolutely fantastic.
It's like behind the scenes of Top Gear.
I suppose.
Like with the flames,
I never really thought it that way, actually.
And the geyser. It was very whoa. It's cool. I really liked it.
Kind of high up.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah. No, I never thought of it that way. Cool, actually.
It followed sort of our sort of intro, which obviously we need to up now. So
yeah. Right. Next on the list: fire, water, fast cars. What else can we find?
I'll do. But saying that, we did start the show during a lockdown, so it is generally going to consist of me and you just sitting in the studio speaking to random people.
Yeah, well, I suppose in a way that video is kind of a reminder of what it was like to be out in the real world and and have a bit of fun and what we can look forward to now. Actually, so long as our esteemed PM sticks to his word and allows us out to do our own thing on the 21st of June. But we'll just temper our expectations and hope for the best and plan for the best, really. So
and get some stuff written in the diary Fire one day, fast cars the next.
Yeah. Set fire to the planet, then drive through it with a fast car, and then put it out with a geezer.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
And this is the creative process of Sanjay. I love it.
You know what? It is part of the creative process. Here's the thing. I always say to people, and I have to remind myself this as well, by the way, this just doesn't just come to me, doesn't seep from my pores and come to me automatically. I have to constantly remind myself that, look, the night before something was a breakthrough, it was a crazy idea. So it's okay to have crazy ideas. So this sort of conversation, whilst it sounds a bit ludicrous, triggers ideas, and you can take that idea, distill it down, develop it, and come up with a concept. That's just how it works. Well, certainly how it works for me. That's my creative process.
That's interesting.
Has there been any sort of creative sort of those crazy ideas sort of over these sort of hard times, and then you're going to apply them to sort of when you can ramp back up again? Yeah,
well, it's been a long time, hasn't it? It's been a year, so
it's been ages.
I don't journal anywhere near as much as I should do, and so I'm sure some of those crazy ideas have kind of gone in one ear and come out the other, sort of thing. I'm a bit like Homer. If you're a fan of Simpsons, there was one episode, I can't even remember which year it was, and he says something like, every time I learn something new, some other stuff leaves my brain, like it sort of pours out because he hasn't got enough space in his head. So that's kind of how it is in my head.
One in, one out, just
basically, yeah, that's what it is. So there's been all sorts of ideas, some of which we're actually trying to put into play. Shoot wise, I'm okay personally, and I'd be interested to know how many people actually relate to this as well.
Yeah.
If I come up with a concept, an idea or something, I try not to build it up too much in my mind, because what I don't want to do is develop it so far in ahead of being in situ that the organic process gets engineered out. Because there are situations like, if you're okay, I'm going to actually just jump to an image.
Yeah.
So that picture there,
that's a great
was kind of just done on the spur of the moment. I hadn't pre-envisaged this image at all. What the story behind this is, the wedding was happening in a building which just happened to have building works going on that overran. So they had to do the wedding despite the building works, but we couldn't do their portraits there because it was a dump. It was a building site. So we took the wedding car and went to this outdoor car park, which is not far from the venue. And anybody who knows Harrow knows that there's a place called the Viewpoint, Harrow Viewpoint, which is where people go to, have a conversation in their car at night. But during the day, it's just a car park. It's just an open car park with this incredible view, and it's kind of part the way up a hill, so you get this cool view across Harrow. But the weather was a bit kind of threatening that day, and we've got these threatening clouds coming in and out. We thought it actually looked quite cool. So the limo driver parked the car, sort of as he had across there, and I had my car parked pretty much where I took the shot from. So, okay, when I go to a shoot, by the way, guys, I don't travel light. I just take everything, because if I come up with an idea like this day, I would kick myself if I didn't have the equipment I needed. So I just take everything. So I had my head in the boot. What was that?
Paul calls me 10-bag Joel because I carry like loads of stuff around with me all the time.
Yeah,
I feel like that's you.
You don't want to be caught sort of shortchanged with equipment. If you come up with an idea and you think, right, I need to do something with 20 lights, then you just want everything there, basically. Sure. I can't remember how many this one had. I think it was 4. So anyway, I parked my car where I took this picture. Now, I had my head in the boot of the car, I was pulling out equipment, and I paused for a second to look around and just kind of survey the scene and assess the lighting. And obviously, I've got this strong backlight from the clouds.
Sure.
So I had to figure out how I was going to light the car and how I was going to light the bride. Just as it was supposed to be the bride and the groom, but then I caught the bride checking herself out in the wing mirror, in the reflection of the window.
Sure.
And she was just kind of just like making sure everything was all right. And I had a little chuckle to myself, and I thought, oh, that's just typical of her, because she's quite bubbly but little vain bride who's very proud of the way she looks, and she's proud of that part of her personality. It's just who she was.
Sure.
And then literally within moments, I had a light bulb moment. I thought, hold on, that's my shot. That's her through and through. That's the definition of a portrait. If a photograph can encapsulate the personality, and other people that know her and even don't know her see this, and they realize that this is her and her personality and who she is, then job done. So
Sure.
Basically I took that as a concept and thought, okay, fine, I'm going to take it and tweak it a little bit. Got her to turn around and posed her doing her lips, sort of painting her lips again in the wing mirror. And have you guys ever tried to catch your own reflection in the wing mirror of a car? It's really awkward.
Yeah, I can.
You kind of have to bend over. So the refinement of the pose in the image came from the refinement of the setup. So the hardest part is lighting the car, believe it or not the person, because it's reflective and it's a big object. So most of the lighting was actually on the car. And one of the light from behind was actually lighting the what you can see of the back door there, and the back of her. So I'm picking up that detail on the back of her. Now, if I'm lighting the car from the front, that wing mirror is going to cast a shadow on her face, right?
Sure.
Plus, her pose is going to be awkward if she's actually looking in the wing mirror. The trick is she's not looking in the wing mirror at all. She's looking straight past it. But because I'm shooting from a distance using a 70 to 200, the whole thing is compressed and it looks like she's looking in the wing mirror. So that is, that all happens in that organic process in situ, which is why I don't like to kind of develop a concept too far in advance.
Yeah,
because sometimes you just don't know what you're going to find on the day.
Yeah, it's good to have the crazy ideas, but like you said, don't dig down too much into them, because what you might get somewhere and something wonderful and beautiful might be happening, and because you're so fixated on doing a certain type that you wanted to do, you're actually forgetting on what's happening around you. So
absolutely. And you've touched on a very important point, I think. There's some of you may know my actual formal training is architecture. I'm a qualified architect. And one of the things we learned very early on in architectural education is don't hang on too tight to a concept, because it can become inhibiting. It can become a shackle. And what you have to, you develop a concept which is there to trigger ideas. And really that, if you can develop a concept enough that it will inform every part of the design, and let's call a photograph a design as well, then you've got something that's completely integrated in terms of narrative, in terms of look, in terms of feel, in terms of composition, design, everything about the image. But then it doesn't have to be a literal translation of the concept. It can literally just be a hint. It could just be a nod to the concept, because if there are enough elements of the concept in the design or the photograph, the viewer or whoever, or the user of the building, will pick up on that. They'll pick up that maybe the design of the building was inspired by squares, or rectangles of a particular proportion. There's an architect who does that. He does everything is rectangular, and he decides what the proportions are. Everything is designed around those proportions. So take a concept and keep it fluid. Just don't hang on to it, because that ability to be fluid with it will let the whole image just develop, and you'll develop the pose, the lighting, the composition, everything moving on from there, and actually could even help you develop the next set of images, a series of images. Sometimes the final image is nothing like the concept at all, because the concept was there just to trigger the initial process of setting up the shot, and then you just move on from there completely. So during lockdown, I've not really thought too much about photographic concepts, but what I have thought about is how the world is going to change. And how we might be working moving forward. So we've actually been experimenting with streaming. Everyone's been streaming.
Yeah.
Let's face it, it's the only way we've been meeting. But for example, the way I'm delivering this stream on my side to you guys, sort of developing a streaming platform for our wedding brides and grooms and other events as well, multiple cameras, keeping it dynamic, delivering the image quality. Hopefully the image quality is good from what you guys are seeing, delivering good sound quality. So that is going to develop into something else altogether. And, we were talking about crazy ideas. I've been having these kind of conceptual conversations with my brother about this whole thing. And we're talking about, this whole streaming thing even becoming a virtual and augmented reality experience at weddings or at events.
That'd be awesome.
And how we can actually deliver that moving forward, because I'm of the belief that the pandemic has forced people to do things that they wouldn't normally do, and therefore be open to ideas, and therefore be open to crazy ideas, right? Ideas that people would have just poo-pooed a year ago, suddenly realizing that it's actually, right there.
Yeah, this could work
here now.
Yeah.
So we could do this stuff, but
and there's a certain nice feeling about being at the forefront of that sort of that technique or that style that's coming out as well. So it's just that nice feeling that the name of my brand or the name of yourself can be sort of recognized with like you said, if it was around this sort of like photography, videography, augmented reality, knowing that Sanjay did that first, that that's got to be a buzz, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, again, that's one of those things you just don't hang on to, because how many of us ever do anything first? Let's face it.
Yeah.
We're so far into human history and
There's
human
nothing
existence.
new under the sun.
There is, the avant-garde doesn't exist anymore. So obviously augmented reality has been done before. Virtual reality has existed as a concept for decades, at least 3 decades. Sure. 4 decades, we first heard about it in the 80s, didn't we? And it was a concept in the late 70s. And here we are, 4.5 decades later, and we're still getting to grips with it and figuring out how now we can bring it into our daily lives. So, what is actually new, but on the other hand, that doesn't mean you just go ahead and copy. That's not what it's about.
Yeah,
it's about taking the resources you have in front of you and making it yours, giving it that identity.
It's like the smartphone. Like the iPhone was not the first smartphone, was it? There was plenty of smartphones. Again, decades before.
Smartphone?
I had a P900.
Was it Sony?
Possibly. I had one pre iPhone.
P800.
Yeah, and it had the flip down and you had the stylus and stuff. I had one of those, and it was pretty crap.
It was.
Compared to the iPhone, it wasn't. The iPhone wasn't the first, but it was the one that did it really, really well, and it understood the ecosystem of how it all came together and how people would utilize it, rather than the iPhone is not a computer, is it? It's a way of doing something.
In comparison to the phones, then it is a computer, though, isn't it? It's got the processing power. Who was I talking to the other day? My nephew. I was talking to my nephew, who's a teenager. He's like 15. So for him, phones look like this, and they've always looked like this.
Sure.
And I was trying to explain to him that you used to have a dial which you had to put your finger in and turn, and it would make a mechanical clicking. And he knew what I was talking about, but he knew I was just I was just mocking him because he's this sort of millennial kid that is so used to all the convenience of life as it is now. But trying to make him understand that computers back then, like the BBC microcomputer from the 80s, I'm certain my Samsung has more processing power than that.
Oh, 100%.
You know, and more memory, more RAM. You know,
miles.
Yeah, it's I mean, actually, I think probably my microphone transmitter has more processing power than that.
Quite possibly. I think the interesting thing about like the iPhone compared to the Sony Ericsson, or putting your finger in a dial, or actually the early one where you picked up the phone and you spoke to somebody like, "Hey Siri, can you connect me to my friend or my mum or my dad or whoever?" Like, it's quite funny that we're going back to that with Siri and Alexa and Google and all these things. But I think that a way of packaging something in such a way that gets that that shift to happen, and potentially your idea is one of those shifts that will happen where it brings virtual reality, augmented reality to the space of wedding and events in a way that's different to how maybe somebody who's like very computer orientated, coding and things, whereas you're thinking about from the visual, from the user, having been to so many weddings, so many events,
and experiential.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it'd be really interesting to see how that develops. Google Street View around the wedding venue, and you can just like click in real time into 360-degree cameras that are streaming constantly. Would be so cool.
I mean, we've been talking about all sorts of stuff because my thinking is that right now, and certainly for the rest of this year, if not, further along, there are going to be a lot of people who are uncomfortable about going to mass gatherings, either because they're just too vulnerable, or they just don't feel comfortable, or they just can't get into the country. I saw a notification pop up on my phone earlier on that Paris is going into a month-long lockdown now, again, when we're talking about the roadmap out. So, we're going to be released, but we'll have nowhere to go because none of the other countries are going to let anybody in because they're locked down. So, it's going to be the same the other way. How do we deliver the event to people and make it an event and not just yet another Zoom call? How do we make it interactive? And there are various ideas, various things that we're thinking of here. So, one of the keys to making this work is making the streaming setup wireless. So it's kind of using Canon cameras, something like the EOS RP, with
and a car battery to power it all.
A car battery. Well, it almost kind of feels like they're not for the camera necessarily, but it needs to be wireless. So there's going to be the camera with certainly a field monitor so you can see what's going on, and the wireless transmitters and a wireless receiver with an AV control unit on a laptop and a dedicated mobile Wi-Fi router, because you can't necessarily rely on the internet connection at a venue. They may not even have one. It could be in a marquee in a field somewhere and there's no internet connection there. So I've had to invest in all this stuff and have this setup ready to go. So I'm essentially all kitted out and ready to go with it. And I'm just using one of the cameras to do this now with you guys. So it's we'll see how long the battery lasts. For example, the wireless transmitter is running off a Tether Tools V-Lock battery. So all this stuff will add up to be quite weighty if I've got an operator on the gimbal with all this stuff. But I'll just make sure
you'll have a rucksack with a cable to gimbal everything.
Exactly. I keep joking that they're going to look like a Ghostbuster with all this stuff. If you watch Formula One, he's going to look like Martin Brundle when he's doing his grid walk. Because he's got all these packs and batteries and aerials and stuff hanging off him, doesn't he? Well, certainly his cameraman does.
Yeah, definitely. I can't wait for F1 to start again.
Oh God, yeah. I was watching testing religiously last week.
I feel like anybody that's had any inkling of interest in F1 has been like glued to YouTube and just watching it because they've got time versus normally. Yeah,
there's that, but also I was talking to another photographer friend the other day. They've been watching Drive to Survive on Netflix. Sure. And so a lot of people who aren't normally, they don't understand Formula One, suddenly realize just how powerful, how critical, how crucial F1 is to the world in general. It's not just cars whizzing around a track. Series 3 starting this weekend, which is very exciting.
Other series that are available.
Yeah, but the F1 last year was groundbreaking in that it was the first, possibly only international sport in the middle of the pandemic. So for me, F1 coming back now this year is the only real sense of realism and normality that we're going to have until we fully open up and the world opens up again. These guys are traveling the world in packs, doing what they do, entertaining us, bringing us the sport, doing a real life competition and a real championship, and pushing technology and everything else that goes with it. It's phenomenal what they're achieving. It really is. It's misunderstood and understated.
For sure. And also,
can you tell I like Formula One?
Yeah, people don't realize the technology that goes into those will eventually be in your car in so many different ways. Not even just your engine, but the fact that the fuel in your car will change and things like that. And the safety in your car has come from Formula One and other top
safety materials, processing, how your car handles, how the tire technology, braking technology. Whoever saw the Grosjean's crash at his last race last year, it's a testament to what they've achieved.
100%.
And okay, it was unlucky for him, but if it was going to happen to anyone, it was going to happen to him. Let's face it. And he walked away from it. I mean, listen, it was pretty superhuman of him to be able to get out of the car in the middle of a fire like that too.
Yeah, sure.
But the fact that little safety, that survival cell, they call it survival cell, that's exactly what it did. And it's just that bit where he sits, because the nose was ripped away, the back of the car was ripped away, and it was just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal what they've done. So,
and also if you look at Formula One companies, a lot of them have sister companies or divisions that are selling the technology that they've developed to other manufacturers and industries so that they can develop it, and also bringing different technologies together. So like Microsoft work with people, Oracle work with people to develop all of that processing and supercomputers. So all of those ways of computing various like really odd in real time, like masses of data from all these different sensors. Like that's something that will come into so many parts of our lives without us even realizing. And I think that's true. Yeah. Bringing it back to photography a bit is how photography is developed. And all the stuff that's in your kind of 1D Mark II, 3, and all the cameras you've used over time is going to become miniaturized to be put into mobile phones. But equally, mobile phones and their computational ability to develop photos and do everything on the fly, and then that'll be pushed into our cameras and autofocus and things like that. It's just mental how everything's so cyclical and
anecdote I like to tell people is when we were all growing up and we were seeing all these pictures from space, how do you think they were getting back to Earth? So you think about the Voyager 1 and 2, or is it 2 and 3? The two that got launched 1 year after another in the early 70s. Those two, I think it's 1 and 2. They were designed. The whole idea, the concept was dreamt up mid 60s. It was developed late 60s. It was built early 70s and launched early 70s. And then it was designed to survive decades, floating in space and sending pictures back constantly. So they had digital photography and the wireless transmission technology in the 60s. And it's only really become portable and accessible to us in the last 15 years, right? Not even 15 years. And when it first hit the consumer market here, it was like cripplingly expensive. How much was the first digital sensor that went onto the bottom of an SLR camera?
I do remember
thousands of pounds.
Yeah, I do remember the the slogan for the 300D that came out, which is about 12 years ago, probably from around this date. And
Yeah.
it was the first DSLR to be under £1,000.
Yeah.
And this was a 6 megapixel sort of very, very basic camera, still very good. We still sell them secondhand for about 20-30 quid.
Yeah. With a postage stamp size screen.
This is the whole Moore's law of technology, isn't it? It's what's new now isn't new for very long. And this is the interesting thing about photography. Actually, it doesn't follow quite the same pattern as, say, a computer and computer memory and those modules and all the bits and pieces that you would use to build a PC. You invest in a camera body. And that body will last you years, and it'll be relevant for years until, obviously, the brands launch the new version of it. But some people like Canon, for example, don't do that. Apple, I think, they push it too far. I'm not necessarily an Apple fan, but they push it too far. Their rate of obsolescence is forced, and it's too fast. And so you'll have their loyal followers sleeping rough for nights outside the Apple store to get the phone.
I've never done that.
Is that you?
I may have quite an addiction to Apple products.
It's only to be heartbroken 6 months later that they've announced a new version of it. And this is after they've already taken a mortgage out on the last phone. So it's crazy. And Canon don't do that. Canon spent time making it work, pushing the technology to a point and then pulling it back so it's dependable for that period of time, which is just a smart thing to do. And then taking that extra that they've had and developing that forward for the next version, which makes a lot of sense. Things like lenses. Lenses are a long-term investment. Some of my lenses are God knows how old. I've still got my 70-200 Mark I non-IS lens. I've got the Mark III IS as well, but that Mark I is just a fantastic lens. It served my purpose for many years.
What you were saying with the developing and getting to that point where it's going to last a long time is evidence in the R, the RP, the R6, and the R5. It took a long time for them to get to a point where they produced the camera, the R5 and the R6 specifically, that are like genuinely world-beating mirrorless, and we were all kind of going, how long is it going to take for Canon to pull their finger out and create a camera or cameras that are really going to be amazing? That kind of follows what you were saying of getting to that point now that completely. The R5 and the R6 are phenomenal cameras.
Yeah, I mean, what a lot of people don't realize is that Canon started developing their mirrorless when everyone else launched theirs. But what they didn't do was release it straight away. They spent that time developing their own ideas, developing their own concepts, developing a whole new lens system, while everyone else is developing, their mirrorless systems to use Canon lenses, via adapters or whatever else. Canon was saying, well, we'll just design a whole new lens system and design it really well, because the RF lenses are stunningly good. If you guys have not tried it, everyone watching, if you've not tried them, they're unbelievable. I got to shoot the first ever wedding anywhere on the planet with the EOS R on the day of its launch and it was with the 4 lenses that they launched together. It was the 51.2, 35 macro. It was the 28-70 and the 24-105. The 28-70 is my favorite lens of all time. It's just beautiful. And the 51.2 is the sharpest lens I've ever come across. Even at 1.2.
And wide open as well. Sharp, wide open. Yeah.
Honestly, if you touch the picture, those pixels will cut your finger. It's that sharp. I couldn't believe what I was seeing from that, and just the natural fall off from the bokeh, from the compression. It's just so beautiful. The image leaps off the screen or off the page.
Sure.
So yeah, it's, you know, they spent that time getting it right, and so a lot of people criticize the EOS R for kind of being neither here nor there. But you know, again, you got to think about what you're launching. It doesn't make sense to launch multiple cameras for every given scenario, because you'd still have to adjust those, and that's an expensive process. So you launch a camera that's a consumer camera, not a pro camera, that can satisfy lots of people and give you a hint at what's to come.
Yeah, sure.
You know, and the R5 and the R6 came along, and it's, you know, it's not going to end there. Let's face it. Canon won't sit still. You know, and how many lenses are there now? Is it 10, 12 RF lenses out now? 15? Sure. I can't remember. Yeah. I can't keep up with it now. They're coming at a rate of knots. That's the thing.
Yeah. And also being able to use the adapter with your old lens and not forgetting people who were using EF was really important and really helpful, and shows Canon's desire to keep people moving forwards and not costing them a fortune to do it. And also, I think people have forgotten how we got to digital. Like, it didn't all happen overnight, like you were saying. And now they've released mirrorless. Yeah, exactly. So,
you know, even on that wedding, I was given 2 of these EOS Rs, so I could, because I always shoot with 2 cameras, and I, you know, I don't like swapping cameras, and I don't like having different camera systems, because I customize my cameras, so I want them both to work in the same way. So I'm working with 2 EOS Rs, both with battery grips, with different lenses on it. One of them I generally always have a 7200 on me. So one of them had a 7200. It was the EF at the time because the RF wasn't out then. And it was with an adapter with the control ring. So what they'd managed to achieve was an adapter that meant that you didn't have any loss of performance of your lens. It didn't slow down. It was as quick as it would have been on my 1Ds, which is what I'm used to using. On my 1D.
If not quicker.
If not quicker. But the other thing is, well, in a way, because the whole setup was lighter as well. But the control ring gave me extra performance, which I wouldn't have had on the EF camera, because you can customize what that does. And I think on that day I probably set mine to either shift compensation, or I think on the R it was set to shift compensation. You know, so it was just brilliant. It was worth the wait. You know, it absolutely is worth the wait. And I'm glad Canon didn't rush it, because they've achieved optics beyond what anyone could imagine, and they just work and they're reliable, and it's brilliant. You know, you don't have to send lenses back because they're soft, or because you can't calibrate them, or whatever it is.
Or the calibration. I mean, just getting rid of like calibrating lenses is a big one, I would say. Just being able to focus, from the sensor, just really helps and sort of opens it up, sort of no end, and just that satisfaction. There's some times when we've been doing shoots and stuff, and like you don't nail the shot, and then straight away you're going, is it me, or have I not calibrated this lens properly? You go through that process, but now, when I look at a blurry picture, I can just go, no, it's just me.
So, okay, this is worth discussing, because I've had I teach photography, so I speak at conventions. I do this sort of thing. I teach one-to-ones when we can. I've been doing one-to-one Zooms. I teach one-to-one, one-to-many, and I come across this a lot, where people they're not sure whether their equipment's working properly. They take a picture and it's like, it looks soft. Or I look at it through my viewfinder and it looks soft. I take a picture and the focus is somewhere else. And people are not understanding their equipment. It's really important to understand the tool you're working with. And one of the primary things that people get wrong or knock out accidentally is the diopter setting. Make sure your diopter is set for your eyesight. If you're wearing glasses, don't change it. If you're going to take your glasses off, adjust it. If
how many people have been into the shop, Paul, with saying, "Oh, my image is always blurry, but it beeps to say it's in focus," and immediately you're thinking, "Let's just check the diopter straight away." It's either diopter or a greasy thumbprint on the front of the lens.
Oh, there's that too. Yeah, clean your lens. Make sure your lens is set to autofocus and not manual focus. And understand the focus settings that you're using on your camera.
Yeah.
Because, we are in 2021 and technology is so intelligent, it's so complicated, that even us techies are starting to feel like Luddites at times, because it just takes massive leaps forward, and you've got to catch up with it. You've got to catch up with what the stuff can do and what the options are, in front of you. So, example is when Canon came up with the FV mode, the flexible mode on the EOS R. It gave a whole new set of opportunities in terms of how you can work with your camera. If you like switching between shutter priority, aperture priority, ISO priority, or whatever it is, if you work like that, then that's perfect for you. But because I tend to generally work in aperture priority, even in manual, I work as though I'm in aperture priority. That's how I work at my settings. But there are times where I would be in manual in what I call ISO priority.
Yeah.
So on a 1DX, for example.
My favorite setting. Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. So the ISO is in auto, the shutter and the aperture is in manual, but you can compensate the ISO in the same way that you'll compensate either the shutter or the aperture. So there are times where I work in that sort of setting, and the flexible mode allows you to kind of switch between those, which is very clever. And then obviously with things like the new autofocus systems on the mirrorless and with the 1DX Mark III, it's a huge leap forward. I shot a wedding just before we got locked down again back in December, before we went into those crazy tier systems, and I shot it with
like
1DX Mark III. What was that?
Like a wedding cake. Different tiers.
Yeah, different tiers. Yeah. That's a different discussion. Off air. The leap between the 1DX Mark II and the Mark III was massive. Just in terms of how it works, functionality, controls, but the focusing system as well is so intuitive and rapid. And when I say intuitive, I'm talking about the whole what Canon call a deep learning. It's not quite AI, but they engineered deep learning into the processor so that it recognizes faces and people and human shapes and animals and things like that. And once you lock onto it, it recognizes it and follows it around, and you can then change how the autofocus behaves. Yeah. But then all of this is fine if you need to be able to switch between one kind of mode and another in the heat of in the heat of battle in a wedding. It's so customizable that you can just do it with a selection of buttons, and it needs to feel intuitive. And that's what I've always loved about using Canon. So when I shot that wedding with the EOS R for the first time, it was scary because the cameras didn't arrive until the morning of the wedding, by the way. Okay, so so they turned up that morning. I'd only ever had a cursory look at the camera beforehand, before the launch. I can say this now. We don't get to see and know about the stuff way in advance like people think we do as ambassadors. It just doesn't work like that. We're in the dark until pretty much the launch date, to be honest. And it's understandable because they've got to protect their their information, their technology, their IP, and protect the launch, because they have to make the launch good. So I got my hands on the camera that morning, both of them. Had to set them up in the way that I'm used to working. So try to set them up as closely to match my 1DXs as possible, and then go and shoot what was the biggest wedding of the year for me that year. Oh, and do a same-day slideshow at the reception that evening.
You're like a child.
And create images for Canon, as well as do a proper job for my clients. So, no pressure. It was...
Did you have the 1DXs in the bag ready just in case?
Yeah, I didn't pick them up once. Yeah, my assistants were using them all day long. I didn't pick them up once. I actually really enjoyed working with mirrorless, because that was also my first time using mirrorless. It was also my first time shooting a wedding with a camera with a,
a screen that you can, yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah. So what do you think of mirrorless then for the first time?
Oh, I thought it was amazing. It was a revelation because, okay, I know my 1DXs are big and heavy, but they are just weapons. My 1DXs have taken the most brutal beatings that cameras that belong to wedding photographers should never ever have to experience. And the thing is, they weigh a lot, and they are big. They're not inconspicuous. And you have to work in a particular way when you're working with them. But with the mirrorless, you can work in a very stealthy, sneaky sort of way. Because the cameras look like the sort of cameras that a guest would have.
Sure.
You can kind of get away with certain things, I think. It also opens up the opportunities in terms of certain types of shot, not disturbing the scene and not trying to be as invisible as possible. I'm not the smallest of people on the planet. So, at a wedding, I have to try and make myself small as much as possible. So I tend to shoot very low down. I'm on my knees a lot at a wedding, so I'm not blocking people's view. So I'm getting nice low down, intimate shots constantly. And I just don't want to be in people's field of view. I want to be as invisible as possible.
Yeah.
So this allows me to do that because I can be, faffing with my camera, but actually prepping a shot. So people just think I'm doing something, reviewing or messing around with settings, but I'm prepping
That's a nice photo.
Yeah, basically. And or working where I've got the camera in my hand, the screen in front of me, but the camera pointing in a different direction altogether. So I'm looking at the screen and the camera's pointing that way, and I'm actually, spying on somebody over there, ready to get that shot. And I don't have to keep peeking over with my eyes. I can just see what's going on with the screen, tap the focus on the screen, and nail the shot, which is absolutely awesome. So, and the size just basically means that I can get away with, holding the camera out in front of me like this. We're trying to do that with a 1DX with a 7200 on it. I've been going to the gym, so not during lockdown, we're working out at home, but you can't hold that position anticipating a moment for too long.
No.
It kills. You start to shudder and break a sweat because that's a lot of weight there. What does a 1DX with a 7200 weigh? About, I don't know. What is
easy.
That? 7 kilos? 6 kilos?
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe more.
Yeah,
I don't know. I have no idea.
When some people came into the shop, and this was probably about sort of 8 years ago, some people said, right, I want to get into wedding photography. What's the first bit of advice? I think one of the first things I would always give was, I think, you'd probably need to join a gym because you need to be incredibly healthy to be a wedding photographer. Either that, or you're going to do your back in, or you're going to hurt yourself because the amount of time, it's long days with the equipment in funny positions. And I'm guessing mirrorless has helped with that. But I think what us as photographers do is that when kit becomes smaller and lighter, we just take more kit.
Yeah, you're not wrong, actually.
We fill our bags.
You're not wrong. So let me show you what I take. What does he call you? 10 bags.
Yeah, 10 bag Joel.
10 bag Joel.
Yeah, okay. It's gonna be 20 bags Sanjay.
This by the way isn't everything. And the reason is because I couldn't get high up enough, even with a 1635, to frame everything.
Pano mode.
Yeah,
look at that.
Goodness me.
Yeah, so that's.
I'm just trying to put something into. Yeah, that's crazy because it takes you a minute to actually to realize how much stuff until you figure out that there's a little tiny camera in there, and then the rest of it, like when you put to scale. So
yeah.
Well, when you go traveling internationally, you're whole.
Yeah, no. So I was just about to point to another picture. So let me switch to this. Look, it's because I've got all that stuff that I can do a shot like this.
Yeah, sure. It's ready for that moment, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So this picture, we counted this the other day, didn't we? Okay, so we're gonna have to count again because I can't remember what the number was. Right. So here's a very quick version of the story of this. This is in Iceland. It's a pre-wedding shoot. So we tend to do pre-wedding shoots with our brides and grooms. So we kind of teach them how to pose. We have a bit of fun. We create some beautiful images that they can use for certain things during their events. They get to know us. We get to know them. There's a big process involved in doing pre-wedding shoots. So he had proposed to her in Iceland. So we went to Iceland to do the pre-wedding shoot. Cool. And we found this plane. So this was before the plane became very popular. We only found it because we were doing our research and we were looking at people's travel blogs for Iceland to, try and get a handle on the different locations and sites to see and map a route from where we were, because we had limited time and we had to make the route realistic.
Yeah.
So we came across this, and thankfully the chap who wrote the blog had left GPS coordinates for this plane, because it was in the middle of nowhere. It was basically crashed on a beach, 40 years ago and just left there. And it's like a 5-kilometer drive off road. So we got there quite late in the day, and this, it was failing light. It was when we went to Iceland, the winter had extended, so it was already anything between -10 and -25 degrees on different days. It was really bad. The winds were, again, anything between sort of 20 to 40 miles an hour every day. Wow. On one day we had a blizzard. Actually, there was a blizzard, and it kind of, that's a different story. But we had to change our plan, and we nearly got stranded. A lot of people were abandoning their cars. And on this day, we get to this place, and you can just about see here like the raindrops. But before this, it was just very windy. So we'd set up all the lights. Now, because we couldn't obviously go with counterweights, we had to carry boulders in our van to weigh down all our light stands. And it wrapped all our lighting and equipment and cameras and stuff in basically sandwich bags so that it didn't get ruined. Sandwich bags and a rubber band. Don't leave home without that. And especially if you're going to Iceland, that's for sure. So we'd found the scene, we'd worked out the concept, we'd set up all the lighting, and we'll count the lights in a minute. And then it started hailing, and it was hailing horizontally. And it was painful. Like, you just couldn't be outside. It hurt.
You see that in one of your behind the scenes videos, don't you?
Yeah. There may have been a clip in the intro video, perhaps, but we had to sit in the van and wait until it stopped hailing. All this equipment was just outside ready. All the lights set up, everything exposed, everything ready to go. All wrapped up in sandwich bags. And I had these pro photos and big Fresnel lights up on tall stands, and I could see them swaying in the wind like this, thinking those light stands are going to snap, and that's going to be, a 1,500 quid head on the floor in pieces, all of them, So I was literally just holding my breath the whole time. Anyway, this hail stops, and we get outside, and it's just spitting a little bit, and we're able to just get these shots. But before we had to re-expose. But we couldn't go around changing all the light settings because of how many there were. I had to change the camera exposure slightly, re-expose for the sky, which had got a lot darker, and then put a grad filter on upside down, because basically what had happened was the continuous lights and everything else that was set up were overexposing the plane. So the only way to dial down that exposure quickly was put a grad filter on upside down and bring that down in camera. So number of lights. From the other picture, you would have seen that I had 9 speed lights. So I had 9 speed lights set up here. I had 3 pro photos. I hope you guys are counting. I had 3 big Fresnel lights, like big LED 1,000-watt Fresnels. I had, what else did I have with me? I had a bunch of LED, just normal LED panels, probably about 2 or 3. And I had the van headlights.
We're at 19.
19.
Well, 20 if
19
you include 2 headlights.
19 lights to create this. Now, if you don't believe that, let me show you this. Okay.
There it is.
Right, I'll play on that. This is just a little. This is just a little. Go on. It doesn't want to play. Play. No. Is it going to play? Oh, that's one of the pictures, but that's not what I want. Let's just go back again. Maybe it'll behave. Typical. It won't play.
That's weird.
They say it'd be all right on the night, won't they? But it's not.
Yeah. But this is how you know that we're live as well.
Yeah,
like,
we are live. I'll get this to work somehow. Kind of while we're talking, I'll make it work in the background. But yeah, I'll find the behind the scenes for that. It does exist somewhere, but
20 lights.
Paul, 20
next
lights.
wedding we do, we're gonna have to buy a van just for the lighting.
But
no,
then
we'll stick to our 4.
Yeah.
But we've got this, and this is a little bit easier to show. But it's cold. Okay, so people are asking if it's that cold, and how can the bride and groom dress up like this? Well, we kept them in the van with the engine running, with the heating on, with a bottle of rum, just to keep warm, so that once I'd set everything up and I tested the shot on my wife Roshni, who basically models for me while I'm setting stuff up, and then I'll call the couple out for the shot. And then they'll go back in again to keep warm. So we got the shot, but this is how it will set up. So essentially, we've got all the smoke from the geyser around us, from the hot springs. That beautiful light on them is from that octa. That light there is actually just lighting up the smoke in the foreground here, and you can't see it, but there's the smoke behind them is being lit in the same direction, just behind that rock.
Yeah.
So if you want to light smoke, cross light it. Otherwise, it just looks flat. So, we have all the equipment with us. We just make use of it. Even something like this, which is in the UK, in a place called Stowe School. If you've ever seen Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, that scene when they're burning all the books, when the Nazis are burning all the books, is this place. Okay.
Oh wow.
So this
combines your love of architecture, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And that's what I'm seeing here. I'm seeing, the repetition, that colonnade, but the repetition is broken up by this lovely curvature. And it was a really flat sky, actually. It was quite dull. So few tricks played here, all in camera, guys. It's not, I'm not replacing skies and that sort of thing. I really dislike doing that. I grew up in film. So I grew up with the discipline of getting it right in camera as much as possible and using, post-production to enhance the image. And, the only time I'll really do composites is if I'm shooting cars. But other than that, it's kind of done in one shot because there's no time at weddings to do that sort of thing. Sure. So first thing is to get the detail in the sky, I've got a heavily filtered lens. So, heavy grad filters. Because when you bring the clouds are never completely flat. It's not like a sheet of paper. They still have texture. It's just that they're quite dense and the light is coming through the back and it's lighting up the whole thing, just like lighting up sheets of paper. But there is texture in it. So when you grab a flat sky down, you'll be able to recover some of that detail in post afterwards just by adjusting highlights and shadows and things like that. But you will recover a lot in camera too. This colonnade had actually no lighting at all, no emergency lights, nothing. All that lighting is mine. Wow. And this is how it's done. So essentially, this is a colonnade. That's the couple, and these are the flashes. So I've got a pro photo on the couple there, and I've got 6 speed lights, right? So behind every other column, and I've triggered them all together. Now, but you can only have one trigger on a camera, and the pro photos work with a different trigger to the Canon speed lights. So the trick there is I enable the photo slave cell on the pro photo. I set the speed lights to manual. You can't use TTL because TTL fires a pre-flash, which will fire the pro photo prematurely. So you have to have it on manual, so it just fires one burst. So manually adjusted the exposure on the speed lights, hit the shot, and the speed lights trigger the pro photo, and then you basically get that. So you've got to have fun with the equipment you have. I don't always do these crazy setups, but seeing as we're talking about crazy setups, we may as well just talk about a few of them. And then I'll show you some of the more simple ones. And, You know, earlier on when we were talking about crazy ideas, crazy concepts.
Yeah.
So this image came about because of a crazy idea I had at a different wedding. So I shot a wedding in Dubai. I think it was a previous year to when I created this picture. And the couple wanted to do something different, something quirky. And I'd seen Mission Impossible, Ghost Protocol.
Yeah.
Then, and you know when he's kind of climbing up the Burj Khalifa.
Yeah.
So we came up with a concept of doing a shoot with the Burj Khalifa where I'm shooting from a helicopter and the couple are inside the building, not outside the building, inside the building. And, you know, because it's a highly reflective mirrored building, I'd have to have the big pro photos. What are they called? The D1s? No, what are they called now? Is it the D4 now? Or the D5? There's lots of D5. I can't keep up with it. It's the big high power.
The big one.
The like 2,000 watt second,
Oh, the 2,000.
Is it 1,000 or 2,000? Is it 2,000 joules? Those big beasts to overpower the intense light from the outside of the building and overpower the density of the glass. So what you have is this massively mirrored building, but you can see the couple shot from the air. That was the idea. But then the couple ran out of budget and we didn't get to do that. It happens. But then when I was this was also a pre-wedding shoot. This is the Shard in London, and I'd remembered that, and I thought, you know, I could still use that concept of overpowering the reflection with flash, and getting that sense of scale and building and architecture and landscape from the Shard. Except I wasn't in a helicopter or abseiling outside the building. I was actually just shooting through one window to another to get the shot. So
awesome.
Here's the setup. Okay, and anyone, have you guys been to the Shard, or any of the viewers been to the Shard? Okay, if you have,
pop it in the comments.
Okay, pop it in the comments. The Shard has a public viewing gallery.
Yeah,
but it's like going through airport security to get to it. It's a long process. You know, you got to park like half a mile away and then get to the building, and then it takes half an hour to get to it because of all the security, and then, you know, you do your thing and then you leave. So you can't go up there with tons of equipment. So I couldn't take all of that equipment with me. I had to travel light. So I had to really think about what I was going to do. Now, in order to achieve this image, obviously I needed a flash and I needed some modifiers. Okay, without modifiers, the whole of that inside of the building would have just been blasted with light and illuminated, and it would have just dominated the image. So what I needed was a pool of light on the couple. So if I just kill the picture-in-picture slightly, you'll see that actually this area up here, that's like one big double height space. So without modifier, all of that inside of the building there would have been illuminated. So need a modifier, need a flash, obviously need a camera and a lens, and I also need a bunch of filters to make this work. Okay, so you've got to think about what you can and can't control in a scene. Obviously, I can't control, and unfortunately, on this streaming and everything else seems to be kind of crunching the image a little bit. It's probably also this viewer that I'm using on Windows. So this looks clipped, but it's not. You can't control the exposure in the sky, and you can't control the exposure on the landscape, right? Because you can't control the sun. But you can control what you're exposing for. So if you expose for the sky, then everything else will be massively underexposed, which means I'm going to be pumping a lot of flash power inside, and it's going to look very stark. But then all of this outside is going to look very underexposed too. So the thing to do is try and find something in the middle. So I'm exposing for the landscape, which is kind of in the middle. You know, if you squint, it's kind of mid-gray. And then all of this is going to look over, and then this is all going to look under, right? So I can control this with flash. I can control the sky with graduated filters. So I've got grad filters for the sky. I'm exposing for the ground. I'm lighting the inside of the building with flash, but I've also got reflections to deal with as well. So not only do I have grad filters on, but I've got a polarizing filter on there as well to minimize the reflection, because I've got to cut from one piece of glass that I'm shooting through. I've got the lens up against this piece of glass.
Sure.
And I've got to try and minimize the reflection. And you can still see a little bit on the glass there. but I've got to minimize that reflection on the front of that building, and that's how I've created that. So graduated filters, circular polarizer, and a flash. Now, here's the fun part. That wasn't the fun part of it. This is the fun part of it. My assistant, ex-assistant now, forgot the modifiers in the car.
Oh no!
Is that why they're ex-assistant?
Yeah. So they forgot the modifiers on the car, but remember, we couldn't take the big pro photos. It would have been too much to carry in.
Yeah.
And they don't like having light stands in public spaces like this. It has to be handheld. So it had to be a speed light. And I've got very specific speed light modifiers. So I had to think on my feet, right? So you've got to be, a bit like MacGyver or the A-Team over here, and just build something with what you've got.
Do you have cable ties and duct tape wherever you go?
No, I probably should do though. I have duct tape, but it's in the bag with the modifiers that you left behind. So that was no use. I tell you, okay, so here's the story. This is how I did it. How do you think I modified that light? Some of you might have heard the story, but I'll give you guys 5 seconds to come up with an idea. You two.
Cardboard box.
No.
Pringles.
Pringles.
No. I got my assistant to fire the flash backwards for a 70 to 200 lens.
Oh wow!
Come on now.
That's out of the box. That is.
It's cool, isn't it? Because
I like that.
You can zoom it, you can focus it, defocus it. You put the hood on the front, and that kind of flags the flash so the light doesn't spill out everywhere. And it comes at the little end, which kind of focuses the light in, which is what happened there, basically.
The Sanjay collection of flash modifiers is just really expensive Canon
really expensive lenses.
Strobes.
That's right. This is it.
That is. That's blown my mind, actually.
That's me shooting through one piece of one pane of glass onto another, and my assistant there firing the flash through the 7200 basically, and those are my camera settings.
Amazing.
So but then look, sometimes I just want to keep it really simple, and I don't want to do anything more than just use window light or something like that. So an example would be this one that everyone's seen. This is literally the bride standing by the window, and you can see the reflection of the glass, the window. And let me just try and zoom in there a little bit. Look, you can see the window in her eye, and that's all it is. Crazy. There's nothing more. You can just about make me out there, right?
Great shot.
So how do I zoom out of this now? It's not going to let me zoom out. There we go. So what else should we look at? Pick a picture here, guys. What should we look at? That's what I learnt with, by the way. Canon A1.
I love the fact that you're using the reflector as your mat to protect your white outfit while shooting.
Yeah. So this was shot in Rome, and it was a pre-wedding shoot. Really lovely couple. It was so hot, and this is actually a building that was used in one of the Bond movies, and I'm trying to remember which one it was now. It was one of the Daniel Craig ones.
Quantum of Solace?
It's the scene where it's the funeral scene where he... Oh, God. What was the last one? What was the last one? Movie?
I wouldn't know. And I'm going to get shredded for not knowing as well. So
I should know this, but it was such a long time
coming in
ago.
As well. Like, how do you not know all the Bond films?
I wonder if this is going to play...
Is it going
to play? This doesn't seem to want to play the videos today. When we tested it, when we
tested it the other day, it worked as well, didn't it?
It worked brilliantly. Maybe I'll have to just restart this and see if it'll do it. But okay, let's go back again. Hold on. Anyway,
was it
that's me. That's me shooting. That's just the still from the first frame from the video. But I'm kind of lying there and all in white because it's hot. It's very dusty. But shooting the groom, and the bride in the same scene. But essentially that's what I'm using. I'm using the sunlight to illuminate the the environment, and then using the flashes to control what's happening with the bride and the groom. So snooted light on his face, and because he's wearing a black suit, I needed to really pick out some details there. So that's kind of, you can see what's going on there with the snoot and the gridded light on him, and some of that light bouncing off the architecture onto him as well.
Helps as well, doesn't it? Yeah.
So and then kind of playing in the same environment, similar setup, it's the same area. Just using the architecture there, just using some of the lines, them just looking into the sun but augmenting it with a bit of flash, and then nighttime. It's if I zoom back out again. Oh no, let's zoom out here. Pick a picture and I'll talk about it. Go on.
The camels.
Oh, the camels. Okay. Oh, gee.
Yeah.
Dubai.
That's another sort of iconic one that everyone sort of knows from you as well.
Definitely.
Yeah. So again, this is another pre-wedding shoot. So this bride insisted that she wanted to have her shoot in Dubai, and we hired some camels. We hired a couple of 4x4s to take us into the desert, and we kind of went dune bashing, and it was nice and windy, and we're getting this lovely dune, sort of the snow drift over the dune there. And camels move faster than you think, guys. Don't be deceived. They're coming at me really.
Autofocus.
Well, the problem is the framing, because I really wanted these lines here to kind of go off to the edge of the frame. And again, it was a very flat, dull sky, and I'm using grad filters to, just bring that detail back again. And you learn these things every time you go along. So that the first time I showed you that shot with the columns, as kind of really when I'd use grad filters to try and extract detail from flat sky, and I learned the lesson. It worked well, so I use it again. And obviously here on the dunes, you're just sliding constantly, and there's me trying to run backwards, slipping down this dune while the camel's coming at me really quickly, and I'm sort of yelling at my assistant because it's windy, you can't hear anything. Yelling at my assistant to get a light onto the couple, but he's going to get pro photo, hold it up in the air. It looks something like that. I'm getting a gob full of sand while I'm yelling at him. He's trying not to slide down the dune there. I'm trying not to slide down the dune over here. I've got my 1DXs all kind of. I was on my knees just before this as well. Actually, no, I think I got on my knees as they got closer so I could get a wider shot. Cameras dragging in the sand. And they just carried on ticking. It was brilliant. Slightly crunchy focus ring afterwards, but because of the sand, but just no issues. They were just built to deal with these things. So
we're never taking any of your gear in Part X, Sanjay.
Well, no, it all gets thoroughly serviced by Canon anyway. So it always comes out looking like new at the end. So
thank goodness for CPS.
Yeah, absolutely. So
I reckon they see your stuff coming in on the calendar and go, "No, you're cleaning that. No, you're cleaning that."
You joke about this, but they dread it when I come into CPS. And there's one guy there who let's turn off this.
Who actually cries when he sees you.
Oh yeah, he's like the first time I went in as an ambassador. I mean, I do this every year anyway, but even before I was an ambassador. Once a year, I take in all my bodies, all my lenses, and I say, all need servicing, sensor clean. They'll change the focusing grid because it usually ends up sucking up like muck from the zooming on the lenses, and I ask them to calibrate all the lenses with all the bodies. And let me just remind you, okay? Calibrate all the lenses with all the bodies.
That is quite a combo.
Yeah.
And
that's like the different variations that are involved there as well. And I'm guessing you've got a couple of 1.4 and 2 times converters in there as well, somewhere probably.
So I've got a 2 times converter there. Is that 2 times?
So that's another variant.
Sorry, that's the 1.4. That's the 1.4 conversion. No, it is a 2 times conversion. That converter doesn't get much of an outing. It only ever gets an outing when I go to the Formula One, because I'll take my 28-300 and my 70-200 with that, so I'll get the 400 out of that. And yeah, a bunch of sort of the extension tubes for macros and things like that. So, but anyway, they see me coming and they're like, God, all right, I need a week to do your stuff, but then I need a week off afterwards.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Do they send you back with a tub of all the stuff that was in your gear?
No, they just send me back a 20-page report for every piece of equipment. So we needed to do this time. What have you been doing?
If you could not be dragging it through sand dunes in Dubai, that'd be great for the next time.
Yeah, but it's. Have you guys heard of Ulla Lohmann? She's one of the Canon ambassadors. German lady, incredible.
Yeah,
she's a volcano diver. Yeah. She basically melted a 5D in a volcano.
Nice.
So
nice.
They kind of expect us to put our stuff through their paces. No one's going to expect a wedding photographer to one day be in the sand dunes in Dubai and then the next week be in minus 25 degrees in Iceland.
Yeah.
And it's great for them. First of all, it's a fun story to tell, but secondly, I'm able to really test the limits.
Sure.
Actually, it's probably not anywhere near the limits of what these things can take.
Yeah.
CPS are glad COVID happened because they won't have all of this stuff in the cameras to clean this year's annual service.
Yeah, they're gonna. CPS is gonna be a bit richer this year, I think. So
shall we check out some of the comments?
Do you want to pick out some of the comments? I don't think we've got time to do all of them, but if you pick out some of the whichever you prefer. I was going to say nicer ones, but you can pick some evil ones if you want. I don't know.
So we've got say again?
That's right, go on.
So we've got a comment from Krish from Kamalin saying, yes, hey, Team Chris. Cambrian, hope you're well, lads, and go on, Sanjay. #crown. There we go. There's another hashtag for you. I like this one. Ian says, Joel, you fired up my speaker again. Stop it. I think that's when I said a few certain names that turn on speakers. I'm kind of tempted to say it right now just to see if it happens again. There's a few from Nick Can. Let's see this one. With the new 8K and 12K cameras and video with up to 16-bit raw output becomes more available, will the photographers be expected to provide these services as a minimum for future weddings?
Good question. And it's something I did for Canon on the launch of the R5. Because when the R5 was launched, along with the R6, the Image Prograph Pro 300 printer was launched as well. So I had to basically do a little project pre-launch to demonstrate how I could shoot 8K, grab a still from that, and print it. And again, it was a revelation. It's the first time I've done that. Being able to shoot handheld without any kind of stabilization or anything. The camera's obviously got IBIS in it. I shot a bit of footage of a bride walking downstairs with a 28-70 f2 at f2, and it's not an IS lens, with the camera just out in front of me, no straps, no stabilization, nothing. Followed her along, picked a frame, extracted the TIFF from that 8K, and it's a 35 megapixel TIFF from the video file, and then processed it the way I would normally, and then printed it on fine art paper on the Pro 300. So, the idea isn't to, I don't think personally, and this is the beauty of photography, isn't it? You can work your equipment the way you want. You use your style, your approach.
It's finding your own way, isn't it?
100%. And for me, I would use that in certain moments of the day when I know things are going to be a little bit nuts and a bit crazy. I shoot a lot of Indian weddings, which is, you know, lots of different faiths and religions within that kind of umbrella of Indian weddings. But for example, in a Hindu wedding, you know, it's an hour and a half, 2 hour ceremony sometimes, and there are moments where there are just things happening all over the place. And I don't really like bursting through moments at high frame rates. It's not really my style, because I, you know, shooting film, I'm a bit more considered about the shots I take. There's a time and a place for high frame rates, but that's not my style. But there are times where I can see its value. And even with the high frame rates, you know, you would traditionally with the SLI, you'd get blackout moments as the mirror's flipping up and down and the shot is opening and closing. And I know with mirrorless, you don't get that so much, but then you get rolling shutter effect. So there are issues there. And what the 8K video will let you do is just film it and pull you still. Now, obviously, the one downside of video is that you don't get flash. But I tend to work a lot with continuous light anyway, so it works really well from the way I work. So I know I've shown a lot of flash stuff today when I'm doing the portraits, but during the kind of the real natural moments in the day, there's usually a lot of continuous light setup, because we're working with, you know, a videography company or cinematographers or whatever it is, and they obviously they need continuous light. So in that sense, it works brilliantly. So yeah, I see that as the way forward. My 1DXs are slowly morphing into R5s and a bunch of RF lenses. So the 8K thing is going to be a big part of the way I do things.
And all 100%. Of your computers are going to cry because they have so much to process.
Interestingly, when I did that thing for the launch,
I'm just going to off the screen. My battery's going to go back in a sec.
No worries. Yeah, interestingly, my computers managed to handle it well. It was the beta version of the Canon software that didn't work so well, because, you know, at that time it was all beta. You know, it was pre-launch, so that's kind of when we're doing shakedown, figuring out what works, what doesn't work so well, where we need to make improvements, and that sort of thing. And yeah, that version of the DPP software was, you know, the pre-launch version, and at that stage, when it comes to software, the bugs tend to be between the software and the graphics drivers. And usually, I mean, we all know this, when there's a big Adobe update, there's always a massive graphics driver update that follows. So it's, you know, it's a similar sort of story with this, rather than it being that way around. The software is adapted to work with the graphics drivers at that point. But it was all right, actually. You know, I was playing the 8K video real time, you know, off my SSDs, and it was absolutely fine. But, you know, the idea isn't to shoot hours and hours of this sort of stuff. It's to shoot, you know, clips of like 10, 15, 30 seconds, 60 seconds max, you know, because they are big files, you know.
So, I was going to say the data, that you'd be changing your memory card every 2 minutes, wouldn't you?
Well, come on, it's 8K. It's you know, you can't expect it to have the compression of a JPEG file. It's going to be
definitely
not, and it's raw. You know, that's the other thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's a lot of data for sure.
That's a lot of data. Yeah, it really is.
Right, another one from Chris. He says, "Guy is a freaking monster with a camera." There you go.
So I'm the monster, and I have a camera.
Yeah, apparently.
No, I know what he meant.
And then he says, "What's your take on HSS, Sanjay?" I'm guessing that's not high speed steel.
High speed sync.
Yeah.
High. Well, you know, it's very clever. Now, again, this is a case of knowing your equipment and how it's going to behave. Okay.
Yeah.
So what that means is, and forgive me if you guys all know this, but I'm just going to make an assumption that not everybody understands.
We always
sync speed and understands how flashes work. But traditionally, with you know, a camera like that, not that. That's not a camera like that. You had a curtain which can open and close at a certain speed. and there's a certain speed where the flash can synchronize with the shutter fully opening and fully closing. And you notice I'm doing it that way because that's how film cameras used to do it. It's now that way. And it's now that way because it's a shorter distance and it can go faster. And you get higher sync speeds. But basically, the curtain opens, exposes that whole sensor, and then it closes again. And in that time, the flash will burst. So that's where the flash synchronizes with the shutter, also known as sync speed or X sync. So different cameras have different sync speeds. Like, for example, my 1DX is a 1/250th of a second. Something like a 5D would be a 200th of a second. You know, every different camera's got different things. A medium format's going to have a much higher sync speed. You know, probably something up to a 500th or more thousandth, 1600th even. Very, very fast. So what happens beyond that sync speed then is you start to get a band. So if you imagine that if you try and go above, say, 2/50th on my 1DX, the first curtain will open and the other one will start to close before the flash fires. So you're going to get a band underneath that, which wasn't lit by the flash. So you get this dark band. The higher the shutter speed goes, the bigger that dark band becomes because it's not synchronizing. And the reason for that is the flash is doing one burst of light and that's it. And that's where you can get the maximum power from your flash. So you hit the button, maximum power, and the curtain closes and you have your exposed picture. What high-speed sync does is slightly different. It's quite clever, but it puts a lot of strain on your equipment. So it allows you to sync your flash at a higher shutter speed. And the way it does that is it just tricks the camera into thinking, well, you just carry on doing what you're doing, go as fast as you want, and I'll do the rest. That's what the flash is doing. So when you're at higher shutter speeds, the first curtain is opening, and then the second one is closing at the same time, and then it kind of scans across the sensor in a very narrow band, a bit like a photocopier when it scans across the table. It's exposing the sensor in that kind of band like this. So in a normal situation, with one flash burst, you just get one white stripe. But in high-speed sync, the flash is strobing thousands of times through that one exposure. So as the sensor's being exposed in that slit, and as the shutter speed gets higher, that slit in between the two sensors is getting narrower and narrower. So as it's exposing across the sensor, up the sensor, the flash is bursting thousands of times, lighting every part of that sensor. So then you can have flash and high shutter speeds. But the downside of that, there's two downsides of that. In fact, three downsides of that. One is it puts a lot of strain on your flash and the battery. So it'll drain your battery very quickly. You won't get maximum power because it can't achieve maximum power that quickly because it can't recycle quickly enough. Those thousands of times. But then on the next shot, you're not going to get full power again because it hasn't recycled fully. So you can't achieve the maximum output of that flash in high-speed sync. The third downside is you get inconsistent exposures. Okay, so some systems are better than others. Canon systems are very good. They tend to be very consistent. But between one shot and another, you're going to get variations. And it's just because things are happening so quickly and you're going to get little inconsistencies. In the worst case scenario on the not so well resolved flash systems, you might get color shifts as well. And you might get color shifts across the picture too, which is the worst thing because you get corrugation and you can't do anything about that. So there's a time and a place for high-speed sync. I generally tend to avoid it as much as possible. I generally tend to work with my sync speed because it allows me to balance my ambient light better with the flash. Now, if you're going to use high-speed sync, you're working at higher shutter speed, which means you're eliminating more of the ambient light. So you're going to possibly get a darker balance, or it allows you to shoot with a shorter depth of field, which is quite nice. So, it swings and roundabouts. You've always just got to think about that exposure triangle and the effect it has on that.
I guess that's probably one of the biggest things in photography, isn't it? It's just balancing all the different variables you have available to you, like ingredients in a recipe, and you've got to figure out what balance is going to taste best for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I may, I know we're short on time, but I'd like to actually just show an image. Let's say that one there. So Bond and his bride.
Great.
You know, again, it's the same sort of trick
well.
and a car as well. Same sort of trick as before. I've exposed for what's going on over here, filtered down the sky, and lit the car and lit the couple. And if you look at my camera settings there, I'm within my sync speed, because if I wanted to, what I could do is drop that shutter speed and brighten all of this up a little bit more and adjust my flash power down if I really wanted to.
Sure.
Yeah.
But then I'm going to get the couple possibly blending into the background a little bit more. But this gives me that separation that I need. And you can see the light setup there as well. You know, just 3 lights, that thing over there, lighting the whole scene and the couple and the car. This one over here, which has a gridded zoom reflector, picking up the couple, and the brolly in the back just picking up the accent on the car. So, you know, it's you've got to pick your tools and your settings for each scenario to fit your concept, essentially. So you've got to work out your concept beforehand, and you know, then let everything kind of piece together. So, you know, we all know the exposure triangle. I have something that I call the image triangle. And the image triangle is a balance of 3 things. One is concept, one is technicality, and the other is emotion. And just like with the exposure triangle, you know, you can adjust the balance between any of those things, but you can't eliminate one of those things. Otherwise, you have an image that just doesn't work.
Sure.
Yeah.
So,
no, that's brilliant.
We're going to have to get you on again. I feel like we can talk for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.
Hopefully in real life as well, and not over a Zoom stream.
That'd be good, wouldn't it? we kept threatening to do this over beers, so we'll have to make sure that all the viewers are kind of got their glasses charged as well, and we can.
Or maybe we can rent out a
podcast.
Yeah, maybe we could rent out a pub and people can come along and listen whilst we're in the
pub. You know what? That's a jolly good idea. I think we should do that.
Right. Yeah. We'll get it in the diary.
There we go. Sorted.
Sounds good to me. Any last thoughts, Sanjay, before we say goodbye?
No, I mean, you know, look, guys, I know it's been a difficult year, and it's tested all of us in terms of our emotions and our finances and our creativity and our you know, hopefulness. But you know, stay with it. You know, keep up your resolve. Just use this time to refine yourself, refine what you're doing, refine your systems, refine your website, your marketing. You know, your energy levels, your positivity. Just take time and reflect and build yourself up, because now we kind of have, certainly in the UK, we have a deadline for June 21, and we're running out of time, in a good way and a bad way. In a good way because we can get back to it, in a bad way because we've got to get our, you know, self sorted before then, and then there's no excuses. So you know, use this time wisely and just, you know, recharge yourselves, build up that positivity.
Sounds good to me.
That's brilliant.
Excellent.
Sanjay,
massive thank you, Sanjay.
No,
we're just going to pop you off the screen for a second, and we'll just have a quick word after the live's finished as well. So, but for everyone watching, big thank you for coming.
Massive thank you.
There we go. Hate pushing that button once again, but there we go. Yeah, absolutely fantastic.
That's fantastic. Really good.
Yeah, really good.
Thank you for the comments, everybody, as well.
Yeah, and loads of comments coming in, which is always nice. I know we didn't get to all the comments, but once again, we went down our own rabbit hole,
You'll have to join
this evening. Yeah, definitely. So
also, Anna said camper van fest. We'll have to ask
that would work.
Camper vans and see if he'll come up for that.
Oh, right, brilliant. Yeah, just before because I had to go and steal a battery from the shop.
Oh dear.
So, you know, just very quick, Sanjay said, you know, he's got a lot of equipment, but, you know, we work in a shop. We have everything potentially at our fingertips. So anyway, on that note,
we're
not breaking up. for the weekend. I nearly said that.
No, we're not.
Because this is the bonus episode that we're going to add on. And the reason why it's called bonus is because we're going to be back on tomorrow. So we're still going to do our weekly 4:30 slot, because nobody's taken that slot away from us. We've worked too hard on that time. So we are actually going to be back tomorrow. So, if you've been watching this and enjoyed it, if you're new to us, then we do a regular Friday 4:30 show, which you can always come and join in live as well. Always welcome to have you. So until tomorrow, we'll see you then.
Cheers.
I got to find my buttons that I need to push.
Come on, Paul.